I met Simon Russell. Gosh, how can I encapsulate this? I met him when I was doing my compost research, and then I helped the Farmers Union kind of reestablish, restructure, get back on their feet. They really were they were really trying to reconstruct at the time. And Simon was the vice president at the time. He was the president of the Haleakala chapter. When I first got to the union, there was a lot of guys. And so I forced myself to go to the Women's Farming Convention. Like, I had to go out of my boundaries, out of state, to go get inspired by women farmers to come back and to really find. And Aloha Smith from Kaupono, I'm like, you gotta get some sheep, you gotta get this, you gotta get that. Like, I came back with good ideas, but it's really fascinating how, the continental United States, like, action over there, really, that reciprocity, that really does help. At least it inspired me. So when I came back to the union, I was like, okay, this is what's going on with all the women around the world. What are we going to do? And I didn't get a very warm reception. But I do have to say this, is out of my whole experience, because I'm not in the Farmers Union anymore, that I have some personal reasons about it, and it's because of the water issue. I married into the Keanai Wailua area, the East Maui area, where we have one of the world's largest contentious water issues. And it just wasn't serving my intergenerational farmers, the union work, as I wanted to. But I will say this, to not talk about that too long, is that Simon was absolutely the best thing that I got out of that whole experience. So I kept it, and I'm keeping it forever. And I think he can tell he's running for office, District 12. And so that's exciting. I know he does farming consultation. He has a large family, so he tries to be subsistent.
Thank you, Faith. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. As Faith said, my name is Simon Russell. I am a farmer, a father, and currently an aspiring politician. I'm not here to campaign, though. I'm here to talk a little bit about Hui o Malama Aina, which is the people who Malama Aina. And Faith asked me to talk a little bit about water. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about Hui o Malama Aina. And Faith actually did this graphic. It was, many of these designs were given to me by John de Lima. I think he's first cousin to Frank de Lima. Anyway, he's a tattoo artist, and it describes the waters of Kane coming from the sky, and the servants here in the corners taking care of the waters of Kane, and the waters of Kane feeding the plants and the ocean. And then these are the teeth of the shark that clear away any pilikia that's stopping the waters from going from the Mauka to the Makai. So that's really what I've dedicated a lot of my life to in the last years, and with the support of folks that I work with, we're holding leadership accountable in the legislature. So I registered as a lobbyist so I could go to the ledge, go to the council, and really spend time to educate them without worrying about breaking the law, essentially. So I do consulting and advocacy work, currently focusing on water policy that promotes Mauka to Makai flow in the Hupua system. Next slide, please. Really focusing on this concept. Water is life. It's as simple as that. I'm sure everybody here is familiar. I don't have to go on and on. But next slide, please. Really, the state of Hawaii is falling down in its responsibility to protect our water, and as is the U.S. government, honestly. And we see that happening right now in the Supreme Court with the contested Clean Water Act case. It's shameful. It's even there. Next slide, please. So, Hui o Malama Aina is a for-profit, service-oriented LLC owned by me to collaborate with like-minded entities in order to truly cherish and take care of our environment through the practices of Malama Aina and advocacy for healthy public policies reflecting public trust doctrine. And for those of you not really aware of what public trust doctrine is, we'll go into that in a minute. Part of the long-range plan to regenerate the former plantation lands and evolve them into a sustainable and regenerative and balanced source of ecosystem services, food, fuel, and fiber. It's also a tool, the company is a tool for the ultimate goal of restoring the superior land management system called the Moku-based Ahupua'a system for regional, social, environmental, and economic resilience. And really, that's why I feel like connected to this subject matter, because we need to recover those resources of the knowledge of how to run Moku-based Ahupua'a systems on an island, the Mako Kai concepts. Next slide, please. Some things Huimalamai has done in the past is a farm-to-school research project for the Department of Education in collaboration with Maui Tomorrow. I went island to island and farm to farm to find out who has the capacity in Maui County to actually supply the 12,000 meals a day the Department of Education serves in Maui County. That's a lot of food. They're the biggest restaurant in the county. So if we can figure out that equation, and it seems like Shansitsui at Mahi Pono is working on that. That would be a great move for Maui's economy to keep all the resources here instead of shipping them elsewhere. There's 12,000 meals and their cost. Another project I was instrumental in was the oversight and development of the Kuya Education Center. It's part of the Kamehameha Schools project in Lahaina, and we had a vision of restoring the forests of Lele, which was the breadfruit forest over there. It's moving along nicely. I'm not part of the project anymore, but I helped start it. And then with my good friend Jeffrey here, we've been working with the Haiku Permaculture Initiative, doing some consulting work. Next slide, please. So let's get into the public trust doctrine a little bit, because it's really important. It says, for the benefit of present and future generations, the state and its political subdivisions shall conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and all natural resources, including land, water, air, minerals, and energy sources, and shall promote the development and utilization of these resources and management consistent with their conservation and the furtherance of the self-sufficiency of the state, which kind of like right here, let's not bury the trash and make a big pile of toxic waste. We could, recycle it or upcycle it. And then, most important, all public natural resources are held in trust by the state for the benefit of the people. And that doesn't really include Canadian pension funds, which I'll go to in a minute. Next slide, please. So, somebody I met in the legislature made this statement, and I couldn't find it from anybody famous in history, so I just attributed to Calvin Ho. His wife, Charlene Ho, has become a friend of mine, and she is the one who went to the Constitutional Convention in 1978 and got the public trust doctrine written into the Hawaii State Constitution. So she's a personal hero of mine. Next slide. And now, alert, Maui and Hawaii's plantations are now under the new ownership of various entities. On Kauai, it's Steve Case and the conglomerate he's part of. It's AOL, part of Time Warner now, and then on Maui, it's a Canadian pension fund. So, next slide. Talking about Maui, what is Mahi Pono? It's a limited liability corporation called Mahi Pono Holdings, LLC. It's part of a group that is actually a group of LLCs and a subsidiary of a Canadian pension fund called Public Sector Pensions, PSP. Mahi Pono's part of a pension fund asset class called natural resources. What PSP says about Mahi Pono is right on their website. It's kind of, you got to dig deep into that sucker, so that's why I'm bringing this manamo out. But they say they're cultivating an inclusive mindset, and they speak to their operations here. Mahi Pono meaning to farm or cultivate morally and properly is a farming venture created to transform approximately 41,000 acres from sugarcane in Maui. The land will be redeveloped in a diversified farming operation in Maui's Central Valley with an emphasis on high-value permanent crops such as citrus, coffee, mac nuts, and tropical fruit, complemented by grass-fed cattle and row crops, which we're actually seeing the potatoes, I suppose. Next slide. And then my favorite. So we're their natural resource asset class. And then this is from their website. We'll show that. A nice cross-section of Maui pension fund. Next slide. So, I don't know how you guys feel about it, being called a natural resource asset class, but certainly, it's impacting us greatly, and I mean, we could go on and on about that, but since time is limited, next slide, please. The the biggest question, for the recovery resource of our body is how could we get control of it? Next slide. And one of the biggest questions I always hear is like, oh, well, the EMI, they've got it. They're capturing, diverting, capturing, delivering, and you wouldn't want to do that. It takes too much energy. It's really complicated. It's 70 miles of ditches. You don't even think about trying to take that system over. It's way out of your league. But from what I hear, it's not that complicated. People do it all over the world. They've been doing it since the ancient Roman days. It's an aqueduct, it's a ditch, fed by gravity. So where would the money come from? Some folks in the Water Commission here, the Board of Water Supply, have said, well, Maui should just buy it. Why do we want a pension fund owning our resources? Why don't we recover them into our economy and not export our water? And the answer I came up with the research, and I didn't hear anybody else talk about it, so I'll claim that I found out that we're not charging fair market rates for the water. It's horribly low. One question you might ask is, what does our closest neighbor in America charge for their water? Well, here we go. It was not easy to find, but I found a website called the Water Journal. The Water Journal. They have a price list for water across the country. Waterjournal.com. In 2018, after a massive drought in California, their prices were over $1,000 per acre foot, which is about $4.50 per 1,000 gallons. Put it this way, as a farmer, I pay $1 per 1,000 gallons for my water. So that's what the county charges if you're on county water. If you're on ditch water, it's cheaper. So here's the numbers. In California, $363.16 per acre foot. Acre foot is 326,000 gallons. And if you do the math, you'll come up with this number, $1.14 per 1,000. That happens to be 276 times more expensive than Maui's water. So why did they do that? Good question. They're helping their friends. If you do the math, you come out with the cost per million is $1,380 in California. Next slide, please. So, and we're talking about water as a source here. We're not talking about delivery. It's just that's what California charges. Like if you want to take 1 million gallons of water, you pay that. If you want to have it delivered to you, well, then you pay extra. You pay 24 cents per 1,000. So here in Hawaii, $5 per million. That's the going rate. Per 1,000 gallons, half a cent. Actually, it should have been zero. That's a mistake. That says 5 cents. It's half a cent. Delivery cost unknown. Next slide, please. So the problem is the resources are being respected in our watersheds are overgrown from invasive species and not functioning properly. Infrastructure is in disrepair and terribly inefficient, and our sacred body is not only being wasted, it's over-harvested and not supporting the life of our lands, riparian zones, cultural practitioners, or the hula life. Next slide. So here's the daily rates for water in California versus Hawaii. So I put 45 million gallons a day here because that's the revocable permit that was just awarded to Mahi Pono. So if they were buying that water in California, that's their daily rate at the source. But this is what they pay. So,
just a quick question. California got way more water than Hawaii does, right?
Ours should be more expensive.
Yeah, I know that. California has way more water.
Yeah. Totally. They're a big state. They're the 8th largest economy on the planet. So here's the annual rates, right? So if this is what Mahi Pono would pay in California, but this is what they'll pay here. So what can we do about this bad deal? Call your email your senator, representative of the governor, call email Suzanne Case, chair of the BLNR, and she's also the chair of the COBR, Commission on Water Resource Management. There's some contact information. Email it to anybody who wants it, or you can take a photo. Take a photo?
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. So, at the current rate of a half a cent per 1,000, we know for recent art, and I kind of just go into the math here actually. $225 a day times 365 is 82,000 per year. And the sick thing about this 82,000 is it goes into the state general fund, which means it never sees the light of day. When in fact, those resources are supposed to pay for Department of Hawaiian Homelands and OHA, as well as the forest upkeep. So in 150 years, Hawaiians and the Aina have been shafted. In California, a million gallons a day is costing about $1,140 plus 240 for delivery. So in essence, for the same amount of water that's being sold to Mahipono and Maui in California, we could make $22,666,500 a year. Next slide, please. So why should Hawaii and a drought-stricken Maui sell their water to foreign corporations so cheaply? Well, we shouldn't. We need to raise the price of source water, restore the watersheds with the revenue. I mean, that's the answer to the money. When people say, oh, we can't afford to buy EMI. Who's going to do the work? I go, hire county workers. Like, so what? I mean, I don't really want the county to own it, but we have to start somewhere. What I think needs to happen is the taxpayer could fund a municipal bond that could pay for the acquisition, and then we could move forward with a company that's accountable to the people. Maybe a charter amendment, something like that. I don't think the Department of Water Supply should own it. Hawaii must empower locally owned companies and get their Hanawai to manage the watersheds and deliver water to our riparian ecosystems, traditional customary practitioners, domestic users, individual farmers, and finally, after all of the people the public trust are served and the Aina, then to local companies that have a reasonable beneficial use. That would be actually what the Constitution says. It's so complicated when people say water policy is complicated. It really is, but it doesn't have to be. Because if you just go straight to the Constitution, it says all public trust resources are held in trust for the people, but not for the pension fund in Canada. It's just like, what? Next slide. So, in my opinion, foreign corporations shouldn't even have water rights. Like, if you want to have some water rights, make your company here. It violates the spirit of the public trust doctrine, the supreme law of the land, and because of the fact that these corporations, meaning A&B and Mahipono, are Delaware corporations, they'll be hard to hold accountable in a court of law. Next slide. So what's a Delaware corporation? Well, I'll get into that in a minute. Both Mahipono and Delaware corporations, both companies, in my opinion, should re-register in Hawaii so they pay taxes here and are subject to our laws and are more easily held accountable. That will go a long way to, in my opinion, to restore faith and trust in their levels of accountability and transparency. So forever, A&D hasn't been accountable to anybody. They run the state like it's their own property. It's sick. Next page, please. So, just a cursory look at what Delaware corporations are. I'm not an attorney, I don't claim to be, but many companies in America are Delaware corporations, and so they specialize in corporate issues, and they don't have juries. So it's just a judge who knows really complex corporate law matters. That's what we're looking at here. Just a lot of pala, just the more paperwork, the better. Like 2,700-page EISs, they're just coming at you. If you don't have the capacity to read it and understand it, too bad. Get out of the way. Next slide, please. That's how they're operating, and that's why I really am sad about the way things are going with the water. The biggest point of Delaware corporations is they offer greater privacy with the corporate board. So Delaware corporations don't need to disclose officer or director names. Who's running the show? Next slide. So, back to the Constitution. Really, for me to reclaim our resource of buying, we need transparency and accountability. We're not getting it, not even close. Like the corporate veil is so thick and so many layers that recovering the resource of the VI is, we got a long way to go. I met Governor John Waiheke at a meeting on Oahu recently. He's like, you guys got to do more on Maui. Don't just like think that everything's okay, because there's a lot of meetings happening on Oahu and in the mainland, and money, water's worth a lot of money. Just look at the price in California. That little RP, we call it RP, revocable permit, that in Mahipono has, That's worth $22 million a year in California. They're saving a lot of money by coming here to farm. And if they're a big pension fund, why should we give them that kind of break?
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
Because the Monte Pone is a very complex arrangement between A and B and a group in California, which is Trinitas.
Yep.
And Trinitas are California farmers, and they're notorious for water theft. And so what we're really dealing with is an operation that A and B, in my view, contracted with to create a new way to maintain their ongoing operations, which they've done for 150 years, through a partnership with California specialists in water theft. So they know what the price is of water in California, and they came here because the water is cheap. The legislature has been, up until now, largely controlled by A and B in terms of its influence. So this is a very strategic plan to basically steal the water resources, to privatize what is our future, and to make it for continuing profits for the investment group. So it's really important to understand what Simon is presenting here is really something that's true, and the fact that it is California people who are the front end of this shows that they know exactly what they're doing in terms of the privatizing of the water resources of Hawaii.
Who set the prices?
In Hawaii is the Board of Land and Natural Resources, which are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. But I'm really glad, Jeffrey, brought up the private corporation trying to privatize the water, because that's what it is in California. I researched, because at first I thought the entity owning the water in California was the state, but it's actually a company called Cal Water. So they already did privatize it there, and that's what they're charging, and they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So anybody can go buy some stock in Cal Water, which, by the way, owns operations in Hawaii, which I just found out today. I did some kind of deep digging, and Cal Water has concessions in Hawaii. I don't know to what extent, but they're here. They're doing stuff. So I think you're right. They're trying to privatize the water.
But
They're getting a heck of a deal.
But I was just gonna ask, but other places they auction resources.
That's right.
So why can't
And that's going to happen here, except there's only one bidder.
So why is nobody else allowed to bid?
Well, technically they can.
Are they going to trump us?
I mean, you have to have the capacity to manage a 70-mile aqueduct with 150 years of degradation. So, and it's a 33,000-acre lease. But it's really cumbersome the way they have it set up. It's not meant for anybody else to manage. So, this is a company island, put it that way.
Yeah, I
They own the
mean,
whole island.
as cheap as the water is, I bet you there'd be a lot of people interested in bidding if they knew how cheap it was. The Nature Conservancy, I know, has bid on lands in the continental United States to create easements, and because there's, I know, Montana, Arizona, some other places.
Do they do water delivery systems?
I don't know if they've done water systems, but I would think with how much land and development is worth, that a 50-acre development worth $50 million could easily pay to have the water, right, for a small fraction, right, and the rest of the water to go where it should go, right. So they could be partners.
To the ocean.
Huh? Yeah, but that there should be developers that are interested in partnering, where for a very small fraction of the water, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
for a development, and that the rest of it could be used correctly.
The farming in the 41,000 acres is going to take 8,000 gallons an acre per day.
Yeah.
So that's where the water's going. They have hundreds of
Yeah,
reservoirs across the Central Valley that need to be filled, which is billions of gallons of water a day.
Sure, but I guess my point is, if you put together a counter bid with a development,
On our side.
then my point is that the most obvious source of money is, in fact, all the residential developments that I saw, and a very small residential development that takes a small amount of water could put up a lot of money, then leave the rest of the water for the rest of the island, right? For the normal things that need to get funded. So it seems like a very skewed, that's this sort of very water intensive farming.
Well, A&B is a developer. They're a real estate investment trust, so that's what they're doing. They own them.
Yeah, but if you have one that's maybe formed with slightly different goals in mind, that you guys can get a much better result, right?
I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. I think that's what already happened. Yeah, what's going on? Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
It's a good solution. I like it. Next slide, please. So for me, in Hui o Malama Aina, this is what I strive for in my relationships with the government. Just trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do. Their job is simple. They're supposed to read the Constitution and do what it says. And, it ain't easy to get them to do that. So, next, please. That's all I have for today, folks. So that's my company, and I'm happy to work with anybody in this hui of ours to reach these goals of transparency and accountability and return the buy to the Aina.
We have like 5 minutes before dawn if anybody has any questions.
Oh yeah,
This
I'm
is
happy to entertain any
it's
questions.
a hot topic.
So where I'm sorry, I wouldn't believe, where is the water burning in the ledge?
Oh, I can give a nice overview of that. Yeah. So in the last legislative session, I was empowered to go there about 22 times, and I testified in person against the House Bill 1326, which was going to grant a continuation of what's called a revocable permit for another 7 years. And that's definitely not transparency and accountability. That's the opposite. That's just keep taking for free and give to your friends. And so that bill died. And then it got a little less easy to understand where in 2016 there was a similar piece of legislation that water warriors, the Kiai probably know about. It's called House Bill 2501. And that sucker, it passed. And so it gave a continuation to the taking of the water for 3 years. And in the meantime, there was a lawsuit filed so that it would invalidate the judge's ability to put shackles on A&B's diversions of the water. So essentially this lawsuit in July said, well, that legislation was invalid anyway, so A&B can keep taking the water. I can't remember the word. What was the word the judge used, Jeffrey? There was a certain word used, the definition of temporary. So it all boiled down to the definition of temporary. So since 1985, A&B and EMI and HCNS were hopscotching these revocable permits. You're only supposed to have it for 1 year, and then you're supposed to get a lease and do all the compliance measures for the lease. So you're not allowed to have a lease of water with the state of Hawaii unless you have a watershed management plan, an EIS, or an environmental assessment, or you get exempted from the EIS process. So A&B is the largest taker of water in the state of Hawaii. At that point, 160 million gallons a day from the EMI, which is more water than I think most of the rest of the state combined uses. And anyway, the judge overturned the legislation from 2016, which allowed this RP, revocable permit, just last October 11th to go forward. So basically, Mahi Pono has a year grace period. In the meantime, they have to do an EIS. So A&B did this EIS, and they started the process quite a few years ago. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. And now this 2,700-page draft EIS came forward. And if you guys don't know the draft process, basically the environmental impact statement comes forward in a draft form. It's this huge document, and then the public is given 45 days to review it. In our case on Maui, it was 2,700 pages. We were supposed to read through it and comment. And I read through some and commented. But I think what Maui Tomorrow and Sierra Club and other organizations did is they divided it in chunks so that you take 100, you take 100, you take 100, and then people commented on that. So by law, A&B, which is the applicant for the lease, for a 30-year water lease, A&B has to respond to everybody's unique question. So if you ask the same question as me, then they only have to respond to one of us. I mean, they don't have to respond to everybody's single question, but every unique question gets answered, and then the community will compile it, and the answers and everything will go into what's called the final EIS, which will probably come out next summer, something like that, and it'll have great impact to our future amount. Because it's widely expected that the DLNR will grant A&B the 30-year lease. And nobody really knows what's going on after that because the contract between A&B and Mahi Pono is confidential. So maybe somebody knows and they're talking, but I don't know. Confidential business information is an extremely tight lock. I've heard that A&B and EMI, A&B and Mahi Pono. A&B will divest of the water holdings and give it to Mahi Pono, but I doubt it. Personally, I wouldn't do that if I was them. So that's where we're at in this process. Mahi Pono has a year to use the water, and then A&B is trying to get the 30 release.
So I would.
But Simon,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
I add to that?
Yep.
Isn't, although Maui Pono and or AMP has been working on this draft EIS just 2 or 3 years back, our county's been actually waiting for it for 20 years from AMP, haven't we?
Since 1985, actually, since the water code.
1985.
The water code came out in 1985 as a response to the Constitution's public trust doctrine. So before that, like A&B just took everything.
Just took care of it.
But I think the Hanavai and the guys running the ditch, they took care a little bit. And only recently was the Hikinui guys denied all their water, right? Since the 80s, and they just not giving you any anymore. And that's why we had the lawsuits. Isn't that right, Dave?
Which area?
The EMI cut off the resource in the 80s to Kenai and Wailuanui.
Yeah, like they.
Because before that they had water, because they were,
Right.
I mean, according to Lucy and Danae, she said that nice people were in charge of the EMI. They would actually open the case and let them water.
This is true. And at some point they took and they took more.
Well, they were trying to maximize production, so they can't give up any resources.
So if this is just a request to the DNR, why don't you guys just request all the water?
Well, like I said, you need the capacity to run the system. So A and B.
But they clearly haven't.
It's
But they
EMI.
clearly haven't run it well.
Well, yeah.
So
you could say that.
so the DNR is clearly not verifying.
But nobody thinks the county could run it well, or that the state could run it well.
Sure, but
So that's just an ongoing debate.
yeah, but,
So
but
it
the,
would be good if we started our own utility corporation and bought out the EMI and got the lease for ourselves and kept the money here.
yeah, but I guess my point is, but what is the DNR using as a basis for capacity to run?
What are we talking about? The DLNR?
So you said they filed requesting a 30-year lease.
Right.
To who?
Alexander Baldwin owns the company that manages the system, so it's a 70-mile digital aqueduct system called East Maui Irrigation.
Sure, but
which is
the state
subsidiary
agency.
of A&B.
Yeah, but the state agency.
The DLNR is in charge of the resource and in charge of the half a cent or 1,000.
Sure, but I guess my argument would be is that the argument should be is that in fact A and B has not managed the system. They've not demonstrated ability to manage the
So
system.
nobody disagrees with that.
But the DLNR, then why would they? Then why is the argument they could grant them a permit if they've not demonstrated the basic rule that they have to be able to manage the system?
Exactly.
If they can't manage the system, why are they?
You're making too much sense, sir.
Yeah. I'm gonna intercept at this point just
You're
because
too logical.
this is the thing. Is he took a field trip to Hana yesterday, and so, or is it the day before? It was yesterday.
2 days ago.
Okay, day before yesterday. And so he has plenty to comment. So you need to talk story next to him at lunch. But I just wanted to ask you one question. If you could elaborate just a little bit on the lobby work that you did to protect $4.5 million because of. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, some years ago, I went to Wailuanui and met with Edwin and Mahilani, and I took a friend of mine who's a really good construction contractor working with concrete, and we looked at their LY systems and put in a kind of a bid or a framework for the state of Hawaii to look at as far as when CIP money, so every year the state legislature appropriates funds, and they're called CIP, Capital Improvement Funds, and then they also pass out things called grants and aid. So grants and aid, fund projects that typically nonprofits undertake. And so they have a nonprofit called Namoku Ko'olapu, and they were looking at getting funding for their Hawaii rebuilding because it's collapsed because of 1,000 years of use or something. It's a very old one. I didn't honestly have that much to do with it, I'll be really honest, because it's very political. And some of the people in charge of the money don't like me because I'm going to run for their seat. So I stayed out of it.
But the money is on the way.
I helped some years ago. I meant to say I was on the board of agriculture and I was helping
Right.
At that point, that was 4 years ago, and no monies came forth, and I stayed away from it because of political reasons. And then just recently, $4.5 million was appropriated by the state legislature to help farmers in East Maui. Now, I just heard the other night, because it's hearsay, that those monies will be spread from Wailua Nui to Wailo.
Right.
And that's actually not very much money then. If
Yeah.
it was concentrated in one area, they could do a lot with $4.5 million, but you spread it across 33,000 acres, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, some helicopters and some surveying to get rid of all that money.
Right. This is true, but the one portion that Wailua is worried about, the Department of Transportation did some road work, and they pushed a cement piece, barricade, what would be
Oh, yeah,
that one,
into the Hawaii.
into the Auai, blocked it, and so then they've had to find creative springs and different means to get their water, and it's been 10 years.
Well, it causes erosion because the water's coming this way, and you drop a giant traffic barricade, and it's going that way, and that's like a 1,000-foot cliff, and it's pushing all the dirt.
And while he's downplaying it, Simon just asking those questions, I confirmed this with our representative, Lynn DeCoy. It did help. Because we almost did, I have her on record saying we almost lost that money. It went back. So the little bit that you did do was effective.
Why didn't they pull the barricade out?
It was down a 500-foot cliff.
And also a rock, when they did that, it made disturbances in that area. And like a perfect rock, they had a screen at the top of the one 100-foot cement, waterway. And so a perfect sized rock went down to the middle of it. And so they were literally they're going to have to put microscopes down this 100-foot cement pipe, see where it's at, stop the water, saw the pipe, fix it, and put it back. And this will serve, that was the last lookout in Wailua that we stopped at on the way back. This will serve the farmers well. So anyway, good job on that.